Savage reporting for us there. Now we want to talk about all of this. Former FBI agent Bobby Chacon and criminal defense attorney Brian Claypool are joining me here in the studio, as well as clinical and forensic psychologist Judy Ho, all here to discuss this. This is getting obviously a lot of attention. It is our top story. A lot of folks talking about this. I want to start with you, Bobby, because you have a unique perspective. You have just come back from Brazil. You spend time in Brazil. We are hearing a lot of stuff from the police, and we're hearing a lot of stuff from the USOC and, you know, from those who are paying attention to the Olympics. What are regular citizens saying about all this? Are they that interested in this there?
I don't think they're that interested from a factual standpoint. I think that they probably know what happened, and as most of us can summarize, that these guys were drunk and they did something stupid, and then they said stupid things about it. I think an apology, a sincere apology by all four of them, you know, would go really far with the Brazilian people, the population on the street, my friends, the friends that I've talked to since this has happened. I think that would go very far in satisfying them and letting this story just go away.
Bobby just went right at it right there and said they did something really stupid and they should just apologize. But as a criminal defense attorney, you look at the video, you look at the things that just don't seem right. You've got these two swimmers that the police are saying, actually, he didn't tell the truth. But Brian Lochte is sticking with his story. So how do we believe him?
Well, you can't believe him because you just saw the videotape that belies or contradicts what he has said. So for him to stick to his story is going to get him in deeper trouble. And I'll tell you why. Two of the other swimmers were pulled off a plane. Warrants were issued. They're pulled off a plane. That's bad news for Ryan Lochte, because these two swimmers are now told, unless you tell us the truth about what happened, you're not going back to the U.S. So they're going to have to come clean, and I'll bet you the story that these two other swimmers tell is going to be at odds with Ryan Lochte, and it's going to prove that he was lying.
I think so far that is exactly what the police are saying has happened, that they have learned from these two swimmers, according to a statement to police, that actually what he said was not the case. I do want to ask you about this, Bobby. I'm curious to know what Brazilians, the police there, will do in this case, because the laws in Brazil obviously different than the laws in the United States, and I am sure that these four swimmers probably don't know what the laws are there.
Yeah, and I think I've read some statements today from the judge that presided, the judge that issued those warrants and stuff, and he actually downplayed the seriousness of the offense and said that at most you would make the vendor whole the damage, you would pay for the damage, and then you'd have a possible fine that usually in Brazil is paid to an NGO or a charity of the court's choosing. So I think that. But what they do in this case, because, you know, when a case garners this much publicity and this much high profile,
it's embarrassed Brazil.
And oftentimes the enforcement of the penalties becomes more extreme, where if it was a regular case with these same crimes charged or possibly charged, you wouldn't have the prosecutors and the judges so willing to enforce the letter of the law. So it's really hard to tell at this point.
Judy Ho, I got to go to you. Psychologically speaking, why would you make up such an outrageous story when you are so well known and you already have proven to the world that you're an amazing athlete? Can't this only hurt you? Why would you do it?
I think, honestly, Ryan has gotten to a point where he just feels like the rules don't apply to him, and this is just another instance of that. And when you look at his social media and you look at his past behaviors, there's really this type of recklessness that you do see. It's a pattern of his behavior. And so for whatever reason, he believed that it was important for him to intercept the news before it even happened, to kind of have this story where somehow he's the hero. I mean, he actually put down his teammates, as you remember from his story, that basically everybody else complied and got down, and he was the one who defied everybody. And that's where things started to not make sense, because anybody who lived in Rio said, hey, if you actually did that to somebody and that person had a gun, it's very unlikely that you'd make it out without any serious bodily injury. And so I think a lot of this is just the fact that he's gotten away with a lot of things, that he's really been at a place where he's been very reckless, and people have really taken a lot of this, you know, kind of just as the way he is. Nobody has really made him be accountable for his behaviors. And he's a lot older than his teammates. And so I feel like he was sort of a ringleader of some sort during this event. And he really set a horrible example for the rest of his team.
I want to ask you, Bobby, as far as embarrassing Brazil, there are going to be people who say, well, they have an incentive to say this couldn't be true because it is embarrassing to Brazil, where they are trying to protect these athletes. They also have problems at home, where there are a lot of people that didn't want to see the Olympics coming to Brazil.
Sure.
They're saying, we got our own problems. We shouldn't be spending money on this.
Sure.
What do you say to those people that go, well, they do have an incentive to make this story seem less true?
Well, the Brazilians we're talking
Brazilians.
about, I can tell you this about Brazilians. They don't sugarcoat many things, and they own it. They know that they have a violent crime problem. They always have, and they've never denied that. And they not only own it, but they try to help foreigners and expats that come in and live there, like myself, to avoid being victims of crimes. They're very, very honest about that, and they're open. They own their problems. And what makes this, even more distasteful to them is they've tried to make this as safe an experience as possible to everybody that's coming there. And so far, it has been relatively safe. And yet, you have people like this willing to exploit that bad reputation that they had or they have to cover their own cowardice. And really, that's kind of why an apology, a full, honest, and open apology is kind of needed.
From your perspective, how do they mitigate this? Because this could end up hurting them, correct, in their careers with sponsors.
Well, I respectfully disagree with Bobby. I think this is bigger than just an apology. I really do. And this incident is as much about public relations in Brazil as it is criminal justice. And that's why a statement needs to be made by the Brazilian law enforcement officials. And I've got a list here of 4 crimes that Ryan Lochte could potentially be charged with. And I will tell you...
And you're a defense attorney.
Look, I'm a defense lawyer. I'm a defense lawyer, but I personally am outraged by the fact that he put his self-interest, his ego above the USA, Brazil, and law enforcement. He mocked law enforcement in Brazil. And think about it. Going into these Olympics, Brazil was already tainted. You had the Zika virus.
Right.
You had dirty water. They were already sensitive. So this was a perfect storm. You've got an arrogant, self-serving individual like Lochte intersecting with a sensitive country like Brazil, and look at what you're left with, this mess.
I have to then take what you just said. We heard the words arrogant, we heard self-serving.
From me?
From you. Judy Ho, are those fair assessments, or are you allowed to do that from afar?
I think we have a behavioral pattern that's established here, and unfortunately, he has made himself very available via social media for us to observe his behaviors. So do I think he's self-serving? Do I think that he's a little bit of a narcissistic person? Yeah, I think we can say that much. I really hope that he sees this, though, as a learning experience. I don't know if he will, but if he is made to be accountable this time, it might reduce these types of behaviors in the future.
Thank you so much, Judy Ho, Brian Claypool, and Bobby Chacon. I appreciate you guys coming on and explaining this all out. There are a lot of people who are outraged about this, both in America and Brazil. I appreciate it.